welcome to Epic FM, the UK's most informed Warmachine and Hordes team, possibly. Is that okay to say, Brett? Does that upset anyone? Is that all right?
Yeah. The best podcast you're listening to right now.
Right now, this very second.
Right now.
Turn off all of the podcasts, for God's sake. Cheers. We're gonna. Are you cracking a beer? We're gonna have. It's just me and you, so we're gonna have a few beers together.
I've got a beverage. Don't worry. We're gonna have like an official drinks break, like we do in football with the hot weather. Is that okay?
I think we're gonna have to. I don't know how people feel about that if they're watching live. Like, what are these idiots doing?
Well, they
Cheers,
might
mate.
also need a drinks break, so it's probably okay.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll organise a drinks, but you've got to stay hydrated. Clink.
Clink, clink.
It's just me and you because Gav's got a few legal problems going on. Unfortunately, wanted us to pass on his apologies.
Is that due to the strikes?
The strike, yeah, he's been taking liberties. Unfortunately, with his striking, he's gone way too far. And turns out just because you're on strike doesn't mean you can go robbing things in Tesco. But
Yeah.
it is what it is. He sends his sincere apologies. But yeah, he won't be with us today. Unfortunately, it's just me and you, mate. So how have you been? What's been going on?
I guess he must be pretty busy at the moment because there's probably a few bent train lines or something he needs to fix or sort out. And maybe he's got a legit excuse. We'll see.
There'll be a couple of leaves on a track that he needs to move or something like that. Do you know what I mean? There's probably a switch that he has to flick.
Yeah.
That's his
But I think we're going to have resolved this problem by next week, aren't we? We're going to have a Gav replacement.
Yeah, fully lined up. We got our boy JCR coming on, I think, next week.
Yeah, Gav Junior.
Don't call it that, poor lad.
Junior Warcaster JCR.
Bless him. So how have you been? I've heard the Yacht Club is popping off.
We are, yeah. We're back at it. So we reached that critical mass point where it was worth actually going to the club rather than just playing around people's houses.
Nice.
So we've had, I'm just trying to think, I think we've had sort of 6 and 8 people back over the past couple of weeks. A few sort of pseudo locals, let's call them, that have sort of been travelling in terms of coming over for games.
Yeah.
So I just shout out to the guys down at Driffield that have been making the bit of a trip into York for those games. Seems to be a really nice balance of people.
Yes.
Probably as I think a lot of metas are experiencing at the moment. We've got experienced players that haven't left the game. We've got a few returning players that have been away, seen the dynamic update, been really excited by what that's brought. And then we've got a couple of sort of new players in the mix as well that are just picking it up. So lots of different sort of levels and where people are at with their journey, but a really positive step to be back at the club and just have that more communal feel, I think, in and around your game. You can play a game and have a chat to people and just look at other people's games, and people are playing some pretty funky stuff. We had all sorts of different factions on display.
Nice.
Had a bit of Legion, a bit of Scorn. I was playing my Circle, but then we got some Retribution, some Trolls. So there was all sorts.
Nice.
Being played again, which is really nice. So yeah, that's good. How about yourself down there?
Yeah, I've been going all right. I mean, the London club, Daniel's working really hard. We got a Facebook group. He's always putting in their games that are going on. We've got a Wednesday night fixed at the moment. I think the challenge London's got is that it's Bad Moon's a really good venue and there's loads of games playing there, right? There's lots of people playing 40k GW. It would be so good if they just stocked a few products in the store. So I think Daniel's been chatting to him a little bit about getting a few bits of stock, because every time I've played there, we've got games going every week. Every time I've played there, someone comes up and is like, "Is this Warmachine? Like, what's this you played?" And he's like really interested and chatting to us.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. It's really great. And I was at a steamroll at the weekend, which we'll talk about. And yeah, there's people wandering around just like seeing like the Archangel on the table and stuff, being like, "Whoa, that is such a killer centerpiece model." So yeah, it's going all right. It's good. Although I'm about to move to Brighton, I'm about to move to Worthing. But they've got a nice little community again that I met a bunch of them at the weekend, so we'll talk about that. But got some games in, went to an event. It's been going all right.
Very good.
We agenda wise, we're gonna look at this Khador badge thing in a second. You're gonna explain to me what the hell a Storm Division is. I don't know what you're on about before. There's a couple of steamrollers we've both played at, which we'll chat through, and then we wanted to get into the subject of list building and talk a little. It feels like it's one of our favourite topics. This actually, we used to talk about this a lot, didn't we?
I think this is
and ideas behind it.
Yeah, every night after a day of gaming, on the car journey going down to the gaming, there's always something about, what list are you taking? Why have you built it like that?
Yeah.
Would it be better with this? Would it be better with that? Would it be better with a different caster and a different list? And you're like, oh no.
Yeah, it was forever our chat.
Yeah. So, but there's such a depth and richness in and around list building that I think we're probably just going to be spitballing things that we think about, which will still be a pretty comprehensive conversation, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, a conversation around list building could be 10 minutes, or it could be hours and hours, couldn't it?
Yeah.
And we've certainly spent hours and hours. I always think, like, one of my like fondest memories about WTC events has always been the ferry ride home, because everyone's relaxed because the WTC is over. We've all had a great time. You've had a couple of beers, but literally everyone is there. They're on the phones, writing new lists from ideas they've seen or conversations they've had, and like there's just this real melting pot of just new innovation from that type of event. And that's always been one of my favorite little moments. As you built up to the WTC, which is obviously amazing. But then there's just this real honeymoon period after a WTC of just sort of list building with the shackles off and the stabilizers off, and you just write whatever you want, and you come up with some real gems in that time, I think.
I just love writing lists. I was thinking the other day, I was writing more lists the other day after that event, and I was like, why am I writing new lists? I've been doing all right. Like, what am I doing? Like rewriting the list as though like, oh, Jesus, I need to rewrite my list, but it's going to enjoy.
Or writing lists for factions you don't even know, and I'm like, why am I doing this? I've now got 6 lists written for trolls. I've not even got a troll model.
How did that happen? So we're going to talk about that, but starting from the top, let's have a look at this. I'll show it on the screen so people can see what on earth. So PP have released this, put it on the Facebook page. They put it on Twitter, and it's clearly the Khador badge. And then with like an iced background, a new Khador badge with an iced background. Brett, you were explaining to me off camera sort of thing. It's like a Storm Division. Now, I know there's like an ongoing thing of me not knowing anything about the fluff. It's not really. But like, what I thought that was a Signar thing. I thought Storm Division was Signar.
Well, so the initial release of this image, so it mirrors how they've sort of just tease some of the recent Signar releases. And so the first thing they did with the recent Signar models that we've seen in and around, like the Storm Legion, so the new Jacks, the 3 new casters, the new infantry, etc., that all started with just the release of a new signet in and amongst a more lightning futuristic sort of emblem. So there's props patterns to be drawn between the order in which they're releasing things and just the teasing that's coming out. But I mean, I think there's a number of really positive things to take from this. It wasn't so long ago that we did is PP's lack of focus causing fury podcast.
Yeah.
But a lot of that conversation was in and around, where's our teasers? Where's our bit of social media? Just give us something, give us anything.
Yeah.
And then these little releases, I think this is exactly what people have wanted, isn't it? In terms of, oh, what's this? This is new and shiny.
Let's
start the conversation. Oh, it could be this, it could mean this, it might mean this. But it just sparks that conversation, doesn't it? As to, oh God, does this mean Khador's getting new stuff? Does it mean it getting upgrades? Is it a new arm to the faction and a direction of travel?
Yeah.
But those conversations, they support the enthusiasm, don't they, for what's going on at the moment? And so Khador will now be just building that crest of a wave, a little bit like Signar have built, as to, oh, we're getting new stuff, we're seeing shiny stuff, we've seen like the renders and the models and everything. And so Khador will now be going, all right, what's our What's our new stuff going to be? What does this mean for our faction? How is this all going to integrate?
Yeah.
And of course, we've got this looming big announcement, haven't we, next week that we don't really know a great deal about. So, whether that's priming the announcement for the Primecast next week, or whether that's just running in parallel with that and it's going to be something else. But like I say, I think whether coincidentally or purposely, but we've seen a change of direction from PP in terms of now just being a little more active in terms of here's something to keep you interested and to get you talking and to get people enthusiastic and excited.
It would definitely
without releasing anything significant. It's just something, isn't it?
Definitely all down to us. I mean, there's no other legit.
I'm not. It's
I'm
nothing
joking.
to do with
I'm
us.
taking the piss. No,
I'm fairly confident we're not even on their radar.
No, we're under the radar for them, I think. But no, it's good. It's a good sign, and it's positive.
We're just a covert podcast. That's how we like to be.
You're listening to the number one most covert podcast.
Number one podcast that no one knows anything about.
Maybe they listen. Do you remember that?
Probably no one listens to anyway.
Oh, people listen. Do you remember when
we could get away with not recording this, Paul? We could have just had this chat on a little WhatsApp call or something.
Well, we do that anyway.
We do, regularly.
Do you remember we did that WTC where we spoke to them on and did a podcast with like JVM and stuff? They do. So I remember that obviously it was different back then, and we were on like Muse on Minis and stuff. But I remember not JVM. What's it called? JVM's bloody. We were on about JVM before this, weren't we? The guy Will Schick. Was it
Will Schick? Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, we listen to the podcast. We do keep an eye on like what people are saying and stuff." Obviously, he's not there anymore, is he? Cool. So that's interesting. Good job, PP. Hopefully they'll keep spoiling stuff. When's the Primecast out? Is it next week?
Next week, yeah.
Interesting. Right, I'll get rid of that for now then. Let me hide that. There we go. The logo's back. All right. So steamrollers. Where were you, Brett? You're at the Wirral. Was this not this weekend, the weekend before?
Yeah. How was that? My last weekend down at War Game Store, which is on the Wirral. We're not sponsored or supported by anyone, but I will just say they have Warmachine stock. I know people are constantly saying, where can I buy stuff from? They had a nice little range in store available. So check out their online store if you're short of a few things.
What's it called? The War Game Store?
The War Game Store. All one word, I think. Or War Game Store is all one word.
Oh, right, yeah.
But yeah, so nice little venue they've got there. It's sort of an old, I'll say, converted barn type industrial unit type thing, like stone building, really nice building. Good group of guys that are over there. It was Paul Sheard that was running the event, and it was split off into two different pods, and just a little one-day steamroller. So headlines or unusual things. Retribution, I think, were the most represented faction. I think there was one game I played where on the table to the right of me there was a Retribution mirror taking place. I was playing against Retribution, and then to the left of me there was a Retribution versus another faction.
Retribution meta.
So it is like it's the Northwest is definitely Retribution heavy. But again, nicely they all seem to be playing different lists. So again, it wasn't just the same sort of thing. There was a whole variety of lists going on. But yeah, really nice event. Really good guys. Paul Sheard, bless him. I'll just give him this little shout out. Knocked me together a little homemade packed lunch because of my little.
Why are people making you packed lunches?
So he'd bought in a sandwich platter for everyone else, but I'd given him a bit of grief at the last event I went to because he'd not catered for my dietary.
Oh, don't start your dietary requirements. We'll go back to that TGI Fridays incident.
Now, admittedly, I'd not told him I'd got any dietary requirements, but he hadn't.
You're such a
appropriately
diva.
Prepared.
You're such a little diva.
And to be honest, it completely slipped my mind again to remind him this time. But he turned up with a little Tupperware box full of a little homemade sandwich with special bread and stuff. So
nice.
It's like it's a nice little personal touch and service there.
Nice.
But yeah, 3 really good games. I played Ryan Jones with his Khador. He played Irisk 2 into me. I then played Michael Howarth with his Retribution. He played Gareth 2 into me. And then I played Andy Devine with his Cricks, and he played Scar 1 into me. So it was pretty high quality field. I played 2 WTC players. Again, nice variety of lists, some pretty interesting list builds, a couple of which are actually on our little YouTube shorts if people wanted to just check in with.
Check out the YouTube shorts. There you go. Something immediate if you like.
You want to check in with some of the things that we've seen on the table recently. And then I myself took Kea 2 and Kruger 2 as my pairing. But I don't think
What's happened to the captain? What's happened to Captain Cromac?
Well,
not fancy him. You sidelined him.
The event had been advertised as an alternate histories event, so we could take the alternate history casters, which for Circle was Old Witch 1.
I thought you were going to say something like fancy dress people turn up in, like, you know. No,
so I'd sort of modified my list, or not modified, moderated my list a little bit under the perception that it was going to be a bit of a friendlier tournament.
Right.
And then I got there and everyone just seemed to be playing their hardcore stuff.
Did you play Kay though, or did you play Kruger?
No, I played both. Yeah, I played both. But like I say, by that point, I'd transported 2 Celestial Fulcrums across the Pennines, so there was no way I wasn't playing them.
Nice.
So
cool.
So that was my event. Very good event, good games.
And you won.
And I won. Ah.
Cheers. Clink, good job. So I went to Brighton. They had a little steamroller there, which I also thought was going to be quite chill vibes. I thought the Brighton guys, looking forward to getting to know them and play some games with them because I'm moving down there in the next month or so. I'm just waiting for the house to go through. Met them at a London tournament. And they were like, yeah, we've got quite a cool meta down here. We all play slightly different lists and stuff. It's a nice little vibe. But cool, go down there. Realised like all the fucking all the characters from like London were going down London area. So yeah, it was a bit of a shark pit on that front. I took Lilith 4 with an Archangel, so I changed my list, trying an Archangel out. Never played the list before, but thought I played a bunch of games with Lilith now, so I thought, you know, I get the gist. And I took like a well, you know.
Is the just hit the feet button and win?
Yeah,
I am only teasing.
Yeah, no, that you're right though. Yeah, well, you hit the feet button, then you normally win a couple of turns after that because there's no very few models left. So, no, we're being silly. She. Initially, I thought Lilith was going to be a bit skewy, but she's pretty balanced. As in,
I think she's actually really interesting to play.
Yeah, but like you can create balanced lists with her.
Yeah.
Oh look, Phil's in the chat. Lord of the Troll is here. He's Brett a Force Ghost. No, he's not a Force Ghost, Phil. We're slowly upgrading our equipment, and Brett's camera's the next thing. So you know, it's either he looks slightly as though he's a ghost, you know, a ghost of the Force, or you just see green, you know. But tell you what, Phil, you could donate to the channel if you want. Help us out. Buy us some kit. And hi to everybody else in the chat.
Is my jumper merging with the background? Is it?
No, you look all right. I think. Do you know what, Brett? I think it looks nice. I think it's a good look. Phil, we know what Phil's like. It's just been a little.
No, I'm gonna go and get changed. I'm off.
No, don't quit the pod. Oh yeah, nice, Phil. Real nice. Now look what you've had. Brett, don't actually go. Where have you gone?
I'm just taking my clothes off.
Jesus Christ, Brett! It's live. It's a bit. Oh, that's a bit. There you go. That's better now. I just like thoughts of your crew, but just like.
If he complains again, that's it. I'm going all full Monty.
No, Brett. Jesus, you're not even pissed yet. So yeah, it was took Lilith 4, took Vale at the Dice Saloon in Brighton. Really cool venue, super spacious, really airy, really light. Got a nice little bar there. Do a bit of food. Proper cool setup. I played 3 games. Played John, one of the Brighton boys. He had, is it Harkachev, something? Plus four,
Arkovich.
Harkovich.
You've literally just mashed every Khador caster into a old Harkovich, Iriski.
Plus, oh, come on,
Karchev.
I struggle with the names. My mind's too full. It's full of such rubbish. So plus 4 armor guy. That was a good game. He had a lot of models on the table. He had a lot of jacks on the table. But I won on scenario. Then I played my boy Jan, England WTC player, top lad, playing quite a bit now, being down here in London. Legion mirror match. He took Thagros Ravners, just having like a Lilith on Lilith absolute hell episode that we played a bunch of times and neither of us really enjoyed. Won that one on Assassination, and then I played Evan, another England WTC player. Never played Evan before, so I was really up for playing him. Nice guy, enjoyed being across the table from him. He played Chromac, and that was a hell of a game. We won't do a battle report thing, but it was a hell of a game. I spoke to you about it, didn't I, Brett? It was super intense. Like I had a minute, in kind of about 20 seconds left on my clock. Won on Assassination. Absolute beauty of a game. Hopefully, he'll chat about it on his cast and get into details of it. But yeah, it was cool.
I think that's probably one of them interesting ones because it takes mortality off the table, so it makes it.
Yeah. It did make a difference.
It makes quite a big difference in terms of just the output of the ranged components of the list.
I was honestly.
Then it becomes, does it make enough of a difference to make it worthwhile? So then it's probably a little bit terrain dependent, perhaps. I think it's an interesting matchup, to be honest.
It is an interesting matchup. It's a very interesting matchup. The bestial, bestial, everyone says different thing, don't they? It doesn't like, you can still arc in. So yeah, if Chromac's really aggressive, he will stop Lilith walking in and mortality in. And if the beasts are near Chromac, within 6 inches of Chromac, you obviously can then arc a mortality in. But I did manage to get one mortality off because the spell marker was out of range of.
Oh, okay.
Was outside the bubble. But it was later on in the game when the board was a bit stretched. But yeah, it did make a difference. And I'll tell you what also makes a difference that is good. I know you've got this in your some of your list. Really good tech against Lilith is the AoE that Kruger puts down.
Yeah, just a cloud effect for -3 range.
Minus 3. Is it -3 or -5? -3.
-3. Yeah.
Makes a difference. Makes less of a difference with Lilith, but it does with the arcades and stuff.
Yeah. Not so much if you've got a Ravagor, but I guess if you're running sort of a Zuriel or an Arcane build where their range is pretty low anyway.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. So you can, if you've got a forest that you can just hide behind, and then you can drop 2 clouds on 2 of your beasts.
Yeah.
There's probably at least 1 shield guard, if not maybe a couple more in a Chromac list. So you can dissipate some of that damage in and around your key pieces. Like I said, I think it's probably a pretty interesting matchup.
Yeah, it was good. Good game.
Yeah.
Interesting. The 2 casters square up against each other quite interestingly. So I won that, which is cool. Second steamroller in a row.
There we go. I'll give you a little clink as well. Congratulations.
Clink. Right, let's get on to one of our favourite subjects in the world of Warmachine, and that is list building. It's really relevant for me because I spent all Saturday doing this. Georgia was going absolutely crazy at me. I said this to you earlier. So why you're on there again? Like you've clearly just made a list. I've got to do another job. I've got to change it. Going on forever. So we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk a little bit about the process. We're going to talk a little bit about the style. And then we're going to have some reflections on like the importance of list building and what role it plays like in the game. But first of all, I took this. Maybe start with you, Brett. Like when it comes to list building, what does the kind of process look like for you, and what are some of the things that are going through your head in terms of what you're looking for when you're building a list? What are the things that you're trying to answer? The questions you try to answer.
And I think although we're going to do this in a linear fashion, I think it's important to recognise it probably doesn't actually happen in a linear fashion. It's just we've got to start somewhere for the purposes of the podcast, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these things are probably considered simultaneously. You know, is it a question? Is it an answer list? Can I Can I address numerous things in the game? Can I play scenario? Can I play attrition? Can I play caster kill, etc., etc.? But I think fundamentally, probably at the moment, there's a couple of key things that you probably need your list to be able to do. One of them is probably crack decent armor. And so I think you need something that can probably kill, shall we just say, armor 22. And I know the stuff that's higher than that. But you know, if your list struggles to crack armor 22, then already I think there's shortcomings in the list. It's got to have some way of beating through that. Now, whether that's, you know, what that looks like is down to then your personal preference. Yeah. But you need to have something in there that is going to generate the output that can crack and take off the board.
A 22.
A 22 heavy jack or beast.
What do you think? So this is a calculation that I've been running in my head with Legion. I always think of armor 20 if I've got Wraithbane, like if I've got like a Naga. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I guess is a similar thing, isn't it? So like, I think I can. I always think when I'm doing the numbers in my head, I imagine armor 20 with Wraithbane.
Yeah.
So just take the sting out if something is sat, because if something's sat on 22, it's either feated or it's got a spell on it, hasn't it? Really.
Exactly. I think there's probably, well, I'll just say 2 models that are higher than that naturally. So otherwise, there's a spell on them or it's a feat.
It's a feat, yeah.
You know, or there's some further interaction taking place somewhere. You know, there's a mortal fear affecting living models, or there's an agonizer sat behind a Titan sentry, but there's something else contributing to a stat that's higher than that. So Wraithbane brings them back down to their base stat, doesn't it?
Mm.
Which, like I say, for all bar 2 models in the game, is going to be lower than 22. So already you're sort of ticking that box.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, if we're thinking about stuff like feat, you played Harkawitch, Irisk, +4 armor, but there's Striker for +5 armor. You know, there's Scar 1 for armor as well. So you'll definitely still come up against lists or moments in a game where you can't crack the armor that's immediately in front of you. So you know, but I think that's a problem that you have to solve on a game by game basis, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in actual fact, it's a one turn out of the game that you're playing as well. Is all right. You know, I'm not going to be able to crack the armor this turn. What do I do? Do I just contest? Do I jam? Do I back off?
Yeah.
You know, you need to address that if you just can't answer it. But generally speaking, on a turn by turn basis, you need to be able to crack, I think, armor 22 as a minimum.
Yeah.
You're saying you do that sort of through Wraithbane. What other strategies would you use to make sure you're cracking that sort of level?
Well, I guess my experience at the moment is in the world of Legion. So I generally like to run casters that will be able to swing my beasts up a couple of strength or drop opponent stuff down a couple. Yeah. So I'll often like look to my caster of like, what's my caster? Does my caster bring any nice answers? Or like Veil's a good example. So whenever I'm building a list, if Veil's my caster, I'm already thinking I'm in a strong position to be able to deal with high armor because I've got insight. So off the bat, I'm like +2 to hit, +2 to damage. So I'm thinking about my casters, and I think about. I think I actually people said this to me before I played before, that I put like Nagas maybe in too many lists. Like a lot of people look to a list and be like, why have you got a Naga in it? But I think maybe I overcompensate. We're going to talk about styles maybe in a bit, but I sometimes overcompensate for it. Because I just hate the idea of being stuck with a piece or an answer that I can't solve, particularly when it's around armor.
But I think because Wraithbane's available in the factions that you and I, you know, play primarily. You know, you've got the Naga, but I've got a Pureblood. But I think there's probably 2 reasons a Legion player is more likely to take Wraithbane. One of those is that they're a more combined arms faction. So you're wanting to do work from across the board with POW 14s and 15s. And so if someone's got an armor buff on them, then Wraithbane is necessary for your ranged output to still affect the game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas I haven't got those ranged components in Circle. So putting Wraithbane on something that's already PNS 21, well, PNS 21 is still going to do some work, isn't it? And so I think that's one reason why probably a Circle player wouldn't attach the same value to Wraithbane. And then the second is a Naga's 7 points.
It's 7-point beast, yeah.
Yeah, whereas a Pureblood's 15.
Yeah.
You know, so
it's a great beast.
It's Naga, easier to just put in, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's 7 points well spent. You've got immediate access to Wraithbane. It's a beast that with concealment gets stealth, which is great considering it's a backfield piece, and it's got crit Shadowbind, which is another thing I guess we think about as well. Is can you deal with high def? Or I think there's a nuance to the question of can you deal with high def, and that is can you create situations where you're not having to boost every single thing all the time. The thing I think about a lot with my beasts, I don't mind boosting from range because typically you may as well boost the hit, boost the damage, and still be able to manage your fury. But in lists where I'm relying on melee, I absolutely hate the concept of boosting to hit. I really, really, really want to avoid boosting to hit with my beasts.
Yeah.
So 7 points gives me Wraithbane, so I'm ignoring natural defensive buffs anyway. And I like taking casters that boost to hits anyway, so I don't have to worry about that. But the fact that like it can crit Shadowbind a model, is it -3?
Yeah, Shadowbind, and they can't advance it apart to exchange face.
So that -3 def just means that when an angel charges or a Scythian charges or Archangel or whatever, I'm like hitting on 4s or something.
Yeah, you're just optimizing your output elsewhere, aren't you?
Yeah. So we definitely think about high and high defs. High def's the other one, but it's less about like can I hit armor 18, 19 or whatever. It's more can I create situations where my beasts are hitting on 5s, 6s. I hate hitting on 7s.
Yeah.
Hitting on 7s and rolling 2 dice. When people do that, I just think that's mad. Like when I see someone do it, oh yeah, such and such will hit that beast.
Yeah.
Hitting on 7s, I'm like, oh my god. If your game plan's revolving around hitting 7s and you're only making like a handful of attacks,
I feel that way when I only have to hit on 5s.
Well, your dice are absolutely hilarious. Watching you just roll bad dice is like a mini game in the game. It's like watching it's like fucking Yahtzee or something.
Just 5 keep track of how many boosted rolls can I roll that are still under a 5. That's my mini game.
Phil just said gun mages. Bloody Phil Shaw, ex-European champion of the Warmachine World, has joined us in the chat, and his gun mages. Phil's gun mages were an absolute disgrace. POW 10s would kill anything, kill colossals.
I bet Phil in his head will just be thinking, God, I bet Deadeye gun mages with brutal damage, they deal with that armor 22 no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, Phil's like, I'd never took Bless, I just shot him with gun mages. I'm on to my next beer, Brett. We started a strong pace to proceedings. So yeah, how do you think about high def? Do you think are you the similar thing to me where you don't like rolling 7s, right? You're looking for 5s.
Oh, I don't like rolling 7s. But I think that's why Ice Witches in Legion have been a great addition to the faction. That Puppet Master reroll is unbelievable.
5 points for 3 Puppet Masters.
Whereas I'm paying 4 points for Chuck Dogwood to get 1 Puppet Master, but I'm still paying it because I want that. I want that reroll.
And you got a model called Chuck Dogwood, which is just great.
Yeah.
It's great.
So that I think that's the first thing you need to think about. The second thing for me to think about is, can your list, and I'll just say manage as opposed to destroy or deal with, but can it manage if an opponent puts a battle group heavy list down on the board? And so if your opponent turns up with 5 or more heavy jacks or beasts, have you still got a game?
Yeah.
And like I say, that doesn't necessarily have to be killing them all, but can it control them or control some of them while you kill others? Can you move them around? Can you limit their their capacity to influence the game, but you need to have some sort of solution in your back pocket to deal with lists that have got 5 or more heavies.
Yeah.
What are you bringing? How many heavies are you bringing at the moment in your sort of list? What's in your Veil list, for example? Just as an example.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heavies. I take too many though, don't you? We're going to talk about this now. I'm all business.
Yeah. My Chromac list is a 5 heavy list. The KL list I played at the weekend is a 5 heavy list. And so part of the reason there's 5 heavies in there is to deal with my opponent's 5 heavies. But naturally that creates a problem if someone else hasn't brought the capacity to deal with those models, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And so I think you need to be able to have that solution in your back pocket. Can you kill, manage, limit, control, whatever it is you want to do, but can you play a game against an opponent that's brought 5 heavies?
5 big lads. What about infantry? Because I'm making an observation. I have not seen infantry spam to the same level that it used to exist. Definitely in Mark II, and definitely at the beginning, well, for a big chunk of Mark III that I played. You would not. I would be always thinking, can I deal with a bunch of heavies? Can I deal with loads of infantry? I'm just not seeing the infantry spam list.
Yeah, I think I agree with that general observation. I have to say, one of the games I played at the weekend was in Winter Guard Command, and they'd got, I'll make this number up, but I bet I'm not far off. It had got more than 50 infantry models in it.
Holy shit. More than 50? Is it like the list that Mike posted in the chat today?
Similar, yes. Similar.
Yeah, it's like a firework list, all rocket boys.
Yeah, so it was double max unit of assault commandos, then there was double min unit of rifles with rocketeers, there was a unit of Winter Guard infantry, then there was some weapons crews, so there was a lot of infantry. I was getting tired of rolling dice. I was making that many attack rolls.
Yeah.
I'd got a bit of cramp in the old dice rolling arm halfway through the game. Needed a little energy drink to keep me going. So I think there's a couple of those around, but not to the extent, like you say, that we were seeing previously.
Well, it was Cricks that would bring it. Cricks would basically just spam the hell out.
Yeah. Cricks, and I mean, maybe that's probably part of the reason why, isn't it? We're not seeing as many Cricks. I actually wonder whether part of the reason is as a consequence of lockdown, and whether it's people playing online, and so just whether moving 50 infantry online is just a bit of a ball ache, so they've moved away from that type of list design. But then equally, those that weren't playing online during lockdown, they've come back to play the game and they're like, oh God, I don't think I'm ready to play 50 infantry. I'll play with 5 robots and some support pieces.
Yeah.
So yeah, whether it's just an artifact of lockdown, whether it's a consequence of those factions that played heavy infantry disappearing a little bit or becoming a little less popular, or a combination of the two. I mean, we've got the sort of Madrak lists knocking around, haven't we? They're bringing sort of all the
true.
warriors.
Actually, yeah, that I have played that a couple of times.
So there's a couple of lists.
The one with all the Pharaoh in. It's got like big unit of Pharaoh. I played John Barry's list in that, like Bazooka Boys.
Yeah.
So I guess it is around, and it's just not as prevalent. You would see it every other game.
But I suppose part of that is it's still got to be able to answer those questions that we've posed in our first 2 there, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely.
So if I'm bringing 40, 50 infantry, that infantry still needs to be able to kill an armed 22 beast or warjack.
Yeah.
And some infantry can, but some infantry just can't, can it? That infantry needs to be able to control battle group heavy lists if it can't kill them. But how is it controlling them if you've just got a warjack in the middle of the zone that you can't kill?
Yeah.
So if your infantry is not answering those questions, then I guess you're not bringing infantry, are you?
Yeah, that's true. Mike's in the chat. My boy Mike. We were just chatting about you, Mike. We mentioned your name and you've appeared.
Like Beetlejuice.
Chatting about Khador infantry.
So from a circle perspective, their infantry has really dropped off because Tharn used to be really, really popular.
Yeah, the spear girls.
So the
No,
blood
no,
trackers and the ravagers with the big
Anger Man.
axes,
Yeah.
would be running around just having an absolute blast. But they're not super keen on Arm 22 because they're PAL 15 on the charge.
15,
so they do a bit of chip damage, but then it's not enough to actually wreck.
I guess Balder gets them up a bit. Has Balder got a +2 strength spell?
Yeah,
+3.
+2, yeah.
Gets them up a bit.
But also I think Death Archons have probably got something to answer for there as well in terms of the reduction in
Death Archons have got a lot to answer for. Never mind. I want to word with Death Archons.
I think do you want to put 40 infantry on the board if your opponent's got 2 Death Archons? And I think maybe the answer is no.
Unless you can absolutely blast them from range. Unless you can just blow their head off. Because they're quite sensible.
But I think that's why, from a circle perspective, Death Archons were really popular with Kruger too, because he could deliver them. So got Windstorm to stop the shooting, got TK to actually get them forward, and then you invested the points into 2 Death Archons, and then you didn't have to worry about anything else in your list to deal with an infantry, because that was just, I'd spent 18 points and my infantry solution was there.
Yeah.
And then if they don't bring infantry, well, it's fine because it turns out they can actually ding up heavies as well.
Yeah. Mike's just said Vlad won rockets. That's what we were just on about, Mike. Your rocket boys. Yeah. Or your rocket boys interested. Probably slam a Death Archon inside the face, wouldn't they? so to move on, so we've been talking about, like, we think about high def, we think about high arm, we think about that, like, could it deal with 5 heavies? What about scenario game? How much thought we put into?
And that's where I was going to go next is. So you've then got to be able to compete on scenario. So again, I pick my words carefully. You don't have to be able to win on scenario if you prioritized your other win conditions, but you've got to be able to stay in the scenario.
Yeah.
I wonder, while we're talking about infantry disappearing a little bit, so infantry scoring in a circular zone is probably, I think, the most challenging way to score a scenario point in the game at the moment.
Infantry scoring in what did you say, circular zone?
Yeah, so scoring that circular zone. So getting a whole unit of infantry in a circular zone that's uncontested, I think is probably the most challenging way to score a point currently.
Unless it's late game and there's few models left on the table. You got like 2 guys.
But I mean, at that point, you're winning anyway.
It's wrapping up, yeah.
But I think because of the area of that zone, it's easier to contest than a flag, for example.
Yeah.
There tends to be more places to hide an awkward contesting model in a big circle, doesn't there? There'll be a house that's just like edging over the perimeter of the zone that you can just tow a man in or something on the side. There'll be a forest blocking 3/4 of the zone, whatever it may be. And like I say, if you've brought a 10-man unit, to put all 10 men in a zone, even just putting them all in a zone is not straightforward.
Yeah.
But yeah, so slight tangent back to why perhaps infantry aren't being seen as much. But yeah, you've got to be able to stay in the scenario game. And so bring scoring pieces and bring contesting pieces. And I think this is. Go on, should we do our all business versus utility now?
Yeah,
is it a good time to do it?
Well, let me just say one thing before we go into business versus utility. Is I was thinking about like 3 things which maybe summarise this up a bit as like things to tick. And one was like the list needs to like solve problems, which we've talked about, death, armor, and maybe just run through your head some like classic meta list. It needs to adapt, doesn't it? So, this is how I think. I mean, it doesn't have to. This is how I think. Can a list adapt around what the state of play, i.e., be good on scenario? Can I stay in the game whilst pushing my win condition? And then the crucial thing I think about, but I think this is a playstyle thing, is can it finish the game if the opponent makes a mistake? So the list that I played that Animag list for a bit, didn't I, with the Chosen and the Hellmiles. And it's cool. I really like it. I really like Chosen. I think they're really cool models. I really like the aesthetics of that. The aesthetics of that
Primal
list.
Terrors.
Yeah, it's great. It's super cool. But it doesn't really finish games like Vale does or Lilith does, or like well, a whole bunch of Legion casters do. You made a mistake, bang, there we go, I'm going to
Yeah,
capitalize on it. It's like, oh, you made a mistake, but I can't get to your caster, but same scenario.
yeah.
So that's how I think about it, mate. Can it solve a problem? Can it adapt to the scenario? And can it finish a game, just end a game if an opponent makes a
And I
mistake?
think, but that point that you're raising there is so important to how an individual builds a list.
Hmm.
Because what you're talking about there is a preference for how you approach and play the game. You know,
Yeah,
you like to have that opportunity where if they misplace their caster, if they spend a focus or a fury too many, and you see this and you're like, oh, interesting. What can I get on your caster? Yeah, nice. Go for it. Boom, caster's dead.
yeah,
And so you like to have that in your locker. Whereas I
definitely.
think, and Legion are definitely a faction that enables that play
Mm.
style. And
Probably at the
they've got
top
a
of that
range.
list, they're probably the faction that allows that.
Yeah. And then they've got a range of casters that do it really well, haven't they? But I think other factions don't have that same access to those opportunities, which is fine if the opportunities that your faction does present suit how you want to play the game. And I think this is really important for anyone that sort of goes on the internet or sees a recent convention winning list, is that list is good for the person that's won that convention because of how they play the game. Are you a front foot player or a back foot player? Do you want to be aggressive, have good board presence and control, or do you want to be more reactive and respond? Are you a problem setter or a problem solver? Do you want a gear check list, or do you want a really flexible all comers list? And so all those things go into this melting pot, don't they, of personal preference on how you approach the game.
Definitely.
And there's a whole load of circle players and Legion players that will play the game differently to you, even though you're playing the same faction.
Yeah.
You might be playing the same caster, but then people are building those casters in different ways, aren't they?
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of Lilith 4 lists now that have sort of only had two war beasts in the battle group.
Yeah.
Which when you initially look at the card, you think, oh, broadside's a really nice
Broadside,
spell.
pack it out with stuff.
Yeah, to maximize that, I need like 3 Ravagors and a Seraph and everything else. Whereas obviously other people have looked at that and thought, oh, you know what, maybe I can really get some real leverage out of mortality and just taking models that benefit through mortality. And so even within casters, people are building things differently. But I think they're building things differently because of how they see the relative merit of then the models that they're putting in that fits how they want to play the game.
Yeah.
You want those pieces that can finish a game. So you and I would build a Lilith list differently because I probably wouldn't put the same emphasis on those pieces that you're.
Yeah, you can't roll dice for shit, so you just rely on being in the scenario. Any game plan where you're like, I think I'm going to write a list for assassination, it's like, go on then. I'm only trolling you. No, but you're right.
I need a theme force that just grants bulldoze or something.
Grants bulldoze, yeah. Don't need to roll any dice.
Or a feat that just says, this turn you don't roll dice, assume all rolls are average.
Yeah.
That'd be
that's interesting feat. Imagine that for feat, all rolls are average.
Just like I don't need an extra dice.
If it's 2 dice, it's a 7.5 or 7, not like if it's 3.
I don't need to roll an additional dice, remove the lowest. No, just give me a feat that says all rolls are a 7.
Yeah, all rolls are 7. Everything 7. Yeah, I think you're definitely right. And we used to speak about this loads on the old podcast when we many years ago. Is we would push back on the whole like this is the best list, this is the meta list, this is the way to build that, this is the way to play that. Because Mike just said that would be an improvement for Brett. It would do proper 7s. Would be an improvement for Brett. We'll push back on that because it misses the nuance of like, well, how do you naturally play the game? Like, and we won't go into this now, but it is a thing me and you have spoke about a lot in car journeys and just like hanging out and on podcasts is that the beautiful thing about Warmachine, or just gaming in general, but particularly Warmachine, is there's like a psychological element to it, as like how someone likes to express themselves with the strategy that they apply. and it's weird. I find it challenging to just be like, oh, that's the best list, you should play that one, because it really does depend on some of those things that you naturally enjoy doing, or maybe even like just due to your like personality to some extent, but just your mindset as to like how you naturally assert yourself across the table. Some people don't like taking big risks and will not, they will see a 67% assassination and go, absolutely not. I'm not, I've got a 40% chance of losing. I'm going to stay in the game and see how it goes. Whereas other people absolutely get on their elbows at like a 40%er and start, cooking some up. But there's lists that help you in, there's lists where if your opponent makes a mistake, you could be on a 60% chance rather than a 40% chance. But if you're just copying, you're just grabbing lists that you see on the internet and not recognizing like your play style, then yeah, I think that's a big people can be missing something there, can't they? What would you describe your play style like then, Britt? What do you like to look for? Scenario, grind someone out.
Well, so this will temper my response, I think. So I think this is now, I mean, it's getting funny, I think. So from Welsh Masters, just because I noticed it was happening at Welsh Masters, I don't think I won a single roll to go first at Welsh Masters. And there was 7 rounds at Welsh Masters. So I was like, oh, well, that's like the odds of me doing that aren't particularly great, are they?
Vegas, baby, here we come. Take Brett to Vegas.
So I've carried on tracking. So since Welsh, I've been to 4 further events. And my record of just winning the dice roll-off, I've won the dice roll-off twice out of 19 games. And
that is absolutely ridiculous. Twice, 2 out of 19 for real.
2 out of 19, and none of my opponents have even had re-rolls or anything.
So bad. That is so abysmal.
And so
2 out of 19. That's really tickled me. That's like just horrendous odds.
So like, I could sit here, Paul, and say, oh, I like to be like, get first turn, be really aggressive, get a really nice ball position and like play the scenario game from there. But unfortunately, Paul, that only happens 2 out of 19 games.
You got like a fucking gypsy curse or something.
So I think just as a consequence of my diabolical dice rolling to see who goes first, like I end up playing a reactive scenario game. Not necessarily because that's my play style. It's just the play style.
That's all you got. That's the only card you got.
It's all I've got. I tell you now, if you play me at the next event, even if you win the dice roll, just make me go first. I won't have a clue what to do.
Yeah, you fuck it up. We were talking earlier about like you say my list, like the concept of like business versus utility, and I thought about that this afternoon or like this evening before we're chatting. And that is interesting, isn't it? Because I think I have a level of negligence around scenario at the moment because I'm less familiar with the game than I used to be. So I'm thinking I want to take lists that keep me in the game, but I'm really looking for an opponent making a mistake and capitalize on the mistake and either alpha in or killing a caster. So the concept of like a utility piece that is going to, play the long game in terms of scoring points. I think I'd rather take a beast or I'd rather take a thing that can do a bit more work. Whereas you were saying your lists are maybe a bit more down the utility. Rather than business.
Again, for people in terms of getting a grasp of what we're talking about there, I'll just give you one of Paul's lists off the top of my head, and I guarantee he'll be nodding his head as he like agrees with this. Like I've not actually seen his Vale list, but I guarantee in terms of support, there's probably a requisition Forsaken. Yeah. Then there'll be a random shepherd because he had a point left.
Yeah. Or not even a shepherd.
Or not even a shepherd.
Yeah.
And then literally everything else, the rest of the 75 points is just beast, Archon beast.
Yeah. That's
Agros beast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the list right there.
So everything in that list is designed to just wreck face. Like it's gonna kill you. It's gonna hit you. It's gonna wipe you off the board. Whereas, and so I describe that as all business. Like 95% of the points for that list are in that list to kill stuff. There's not a lot else in there.
Business.
Whereas then if you look at my list, there's just random crap in the list that is just. In some games it's amazing, in other games it's not amazing. But in the games where you don't need that random crap, they just become scoring or contesting pieces. And so things like the River Raiders, the Swamp Goblin River Raiders, are a really nice example of that. For 1 point, I've either got a 1 point contesting or scoring solo in certain games, or in other games, I've got something that can affect the heavies on the board. We go back to controlling heavies that we were talking about earlier, or dropping the armor of the heavies that are on the board. So I've got an armor debuff. So again, we go back to addressing that armor 22. I've got Thrulls in there. They're a 3 point combat solo that then just so happens to have Dispel. It's got Prowl. It's got 3 initial attacks. It's got advanced deployment. It's got Pathfinder. In some games, those guys are there to knock off upkeep spells and to stop people casting spells at me. In other games, again, they're just a 3 point scoring piece, contesting piece, jamming piece. And so there's a lot more of my list that's just got these smaller component parts that complement the business side of things. It's like it's almost like, imagine a pop star with an entourage. Paul's just got all the headline acts for Glastonbury walking around with no entourage.
Yeah.
Whereas I've just got 2 headliners with this massive entourage of just, someone to get me water, someone to get me a sandwich, someone to get chocolate.
It just cut out, but you're back. You're live. You can hear me.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Phew. I thought it cut out. I thought we were going to end up having to do a two.
And so yeah, you're definitely all about the business. Whereas, I can probably do it off the top of my head. I bet something like my current Wormwood list has maybe got 30 points of flexible utility type pieces.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I write probably what I'd consider a more balanced list design or concept that's capable of playing lots of things.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways you're the same. Neither of us particularly build lists that are a gear checklist or that ask a very hard question that an opponent either has or has not got an answer to. As an example, we can give an easy one there, can't we? A Khador card shed build's a bit like that, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah. It's problem present.
I'm bringing 7 robots. You can either deal with that or you can't.
Yeah.
And so it's very much like a hard gear check list.
Yeah.
But not necessarily that same degree of flexibility within it. It's either going to just roll over someone, or it's going to hit something it really struggles into and doesn't have those component flexibility pieces to perhaps be able to play its way out of that trouble.
Yeah, I definitely I see the fun in playing those lists, and maybe it's because Legion doesn't really. I guess in some respects, like Lilith does present that naturally as a caster if you just have like a moderately decent battle group, but she doesn't push it so hard that like that's her gig.
Yeah.
Like if you've sat across Lilith 4, you need to be thinking about like, can my caster be within 22 inches of Lilith?
Yeah.
If yes, like how much focus fury does it need to keep on it to not just instantly get wiped? But yeah, I think we are similar, that we enjoy lists that can answer problems rather than just being this big thing of like, bang, there you go, can you deal with that or not? Over to you. We like unpicking and working things out. Well,
because you could build a Lilith 4 list that's 4 Ravagors, Naga, Typhon, whatever, couldn't you? And that's definitely a more gear check Lilith list.
Yeah. It's
very obvious what it's going to try and do.
Yeah.
It's very obvious how it's going to try and do it. But alternatively, you can actually build a Lilith 4 list that is a more balanced, flexible list. You know, got maybe 2-3 heavies in it. It's got a unit in it. Yeah, you know, it's got some raptors in it, or it's got some archers in it, or it's got some striders in it. You know, it's got like these other little moving pieces to it. Like, oh right, this is how's this actually going to play out, and what's it going to do?
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite Lilith 4 lists that I played around with a fair bit was actually in Primal Terrors.
Yeah, you had a Hellmouth in it, didn't you?
Yeah, you know, I've got a couple of Hellmouths in it. I've got a unit of Ogre and Warmongers in it. You know, so again, not the usual thing that you'd see from Lilith 4, and so you know, you can definitely build more balanced versions of these casters that might more obviously lend themselves to a gear check. But again, that's a playstyle thing. That's down to your personal preference for how you want to play the game. But I think both you and I really like the cognitive challenge aspect of the game. You know, you know, it's part of the reason we play this game rather than, you know, something else with random charges and where we just have to roll 4 ups.
Yeah, definitely. And I like solving the problem the opponent presents rather than presenting a problem being like over to you, see if you can work that out. I just mentally find that more like enjoyable. But it is interesting that maybe it's like to have to come back and making lists that are all about all business, because it's kind of like that in my head is a more comfortable win condition of being like, well, just kill as much as I can and then win on clock or assassination, rather than the more like nuanced scenario, staying in the game, sandpapering type approach. Because I think the more recent iterations of my list, particular ones that I played at the weekend, well, maybe less so the Veil one, I'm not going to lie, it was loads of heavies. But the Lilith list, I was thinking more about like solar, like I've got your Scylla in there and the Ice Witch is in there. So I've naturally been thinking like, okay, cool. How do I create a bit more utility for those key pieces and balance? Whereas I think there's like a natural, it's like coming back to the game and not really knowing what everything does. You think, well, if I just take loads of pieces that can kill you, I can make a mistake. I just lost an angel. Well, I've got 3 more. Well, not 3, but like I've got a bunch more.
Definitely. Or you're playing that game of, I'm not sure what that piece does. Right, I'll just kill that piece.
Just
whereas the utility lists they've got that greater nuance to them, aren't they? Of right, I can address that problem, but because I've got these pieces, so naturally the understanding needs to be that little bit greater, doesn't it? I need to understand the problems that's being presented and my optimal solution to that problem.
Yeah.
You know, whereas you know the alternative to that is definitely the approach you've just articulated, which is, I'm not really sure what that does, but I think if I shoot it 3 times with a Ravagore, it's dead.
Yeah, it should be dead, yeah. There's a cool, like, and just as a general observation from like list building and focusing on that point, there is like quite a cool balance in the game, I think, around what people are taking. I've not seen many lists. I mean, Karchev with the heavies is a clear example. But outside of that, I actually don't think there's loads and loads and loads of meta skewing lists. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you disagree, take us in another direction. But I've seen I think we talked about this in one of the first episodes, was like people are kind of taking reasonably balanced battle groups and reasonably balanced solos and units. It's quite a nice environment to try different things, rather than you know, the days where the meta was skewed really heavy by Haley, really heavy by Denny 2 was it? They're just like instant, you know, all that sort of stuff. You know, the big crit spammy builds and stuff, double colossals, all sorts of things. So it's quite a nice. Yeah, it feels you can build quite a lot of lists based on your playstyle, and they're not just be like ruled out. Were we texting at the weekend about the Carissa with loads of Nelfin soldiers and stuff? I mean, even that, like, we're like messing around about it. It's like, well, actually, this seems pretty decent. Like, that seems pretty, like, you think, I've just made a list with like 7 Nelfin soldiers in it. Actually, it's pretty quite good. It looks quite good. Like, there's loads of stuff that I could play.
But I think if that's the case, and I think it genuinely is, then in terms of sort of, you know, if you're at home taking notes on, you know, ideas around list building, the one that you definitely need underlining is just how I want to play the game, because definitely it's less important now that you have to take this caster or this caster.
Yeah,
it's less important than that caster needs this battle group or this composition of units. I genuinely think you can take whichever caster you want, with a selection battle group of whatever you want that matches how you want to play the game, and you'll have great fun with it, and you'll probably win games with it. I think the Kruger 2 list I took at the weekend is probably a great example of that. I had some right random crap in there.
Yeah.
I'd got 2 Pharaoh Sappers. People were asking me what the models were even. But it turns out when you can plant mines all around your zone to stop people going into it,
It turns out
but planting mines while TKing stuff, while a battle engine's like crit spraying and freezing stuff in place. There's loads of cool interactions. And is that an absolutely optimized list? Probably not. Was it a list that really satisfied how I like to play the game and like the fun interactions that can take place and just doing something a little bit different? Yeah, absolutely so.
Yeah. The glitchy bit has just said this is probably the most diverse meta I've seen across all editions. Yeah, I agree.
Who was it that said that?
The glitchy bit.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And Brad, what a great place for the game to be in. Genuinely, what a great place for the game to be in, where pretty much, any of the models I've got in my loft or under my bed or wherever you store them, I could genuinely put on the table.
Yeah, it's a good shout. So we talked a bit about, don't start me playing the terminal list on Amazon Prime. That's not what the people want to hear. Although it's great though, check it out, the terminal list on Amazon Prime with Chris Pratt. It's intense. And then, so the other thing we're going to talk about was like the importance and I guess how unique is the concept of list building in the like wargaming world. So I disappeared, played AOS for a bit, played the Hellhold at his 40k for a bit, and just nothing came close to that same process of writing lists, both on a practical sense of having war room and building lists, but also just like on an enjoyment perspective. Because in other game systems, you have a list, just one list. There's no like, how does this list match that list? So we're going to think a little bit about the kind of role it plays. I spent so much of Saturday writing lists and jumping on War Room and looking at like players that I knew that were going. Spent loads. I just convinced that I was going to end up playing Ryan. I was just shut because I've not played Ryan before, and I'd be really great to have a game with Ryan. But I kind of had this feeling that I play Ryan. I mean, I didn't in the end, but I ended up just reading loads of like Crucible Guard stuff. How do I deal with failed experiments? What do I need to know about Gearhart? Like, how easy is it for me to kill the Colossal with this list? How is it to list this? And I ended up like, maybe we should have talked about this earlier, but I ended up on my iPad having this big map of like, like the different factions and which bits of my list answer what. But it was fun. Like, I spent ages doing it. And it feels like you talked about this before, and I'm just gonna like steal it like really shamelessly. I really don't.
At least you've given me credit.
No, I don't care. I give you credit, but you were talking about like there's kind of like 3 core parts to gaming, particularly Warmachine. One of which is like getting the models on the table and sitting opposite someone and rolling some dice, the playing element. Another is the modeling, the assembly, the painting, and then the third is this like the list building and the absorption in what do I want to put on the table. And how much would you say your hobby time that takes up, or like how much enjoyment do you get of that element of the game compared to some of those other bits?
Yeah, I imagine it's probably pretty fair observation that I open War Room at least once a day. Like at least once a day. Probably more. Whether that's on the toilet, on the train, like having a coffee and, coffee, you just got half an hour at work and you just like, have a coffee.
Chatting to Saz. You're like, yeah, whatever. Chatting to Saz. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Saz is watching Love Island and I'm thinking, oh God, what's this shit?
Here we go. It is dreadful.
So yeah, it's it's one of those things that, like I say, it gets opened at least once a day. Genuinely, I think it's probably way more than that. I can probably track it right on my phone if I actually was that bothered. I probably shouldn't, but
I don't stress yourself out. I won't look if I were you.
yeah, I would probably best not to track it. But I think it's a super important part of, and I'll just now call it the hobby. You know, I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I, that out of those three parts, so you've got playing, you've got like the very classical hobby side of things, the painting, the building, and then list building. I think to be engaged in the hobby, you've got to be engaged in at least two of those three things. You know, that's how you sell people on this hobby. That's how you keep them engaged, enthused, interested. You know, we all love playing the games. That's probably why we do it in the first place. And then they need one of the others.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I enjoy painting. I enjoy the hobby side of things. But I equally get that some people don't enjoy the hobby side of things. You know, they're very happy to play with just metal models or prime models, or you know, just pop some contrast paints on there, get them to tabletop standard and play. But those people spend hours on War Room, so that they're invested in the game as a whole through playing and then through building lists on War Room, looking at cards on War Room. You know, if other people are on WhatsApp or Facebook group chats like we are, you know, half the messages in our WhatsApp are just, I've written this list, or I've had this idea, or or have you seen this guy and what this guy does, or oh my God, why is no one playing this? And there's a picture of the card, and so I don't think we're unique in the fact that we spend time on War Room, but I think it's absolutely part of the hobby. I think if you put War Room down and never open it, that enthusiasm for the game is going to wane. I think you're going to lose that investment in the game. It's
such a great tool. Like it's such an amazing tool to have at your fingertips. From playing other game systems where we're talking about this before the cast. Like if you wanted to do this in a GW game, you need like 15 books. If you wanted to be able to quickly find out what can the other stuff do against my list, you would just need like endless books to like flick through. But the fact you could just quickly see all the rules of your faction, and do you still have to pay for it all? I can't remember. I feel like it was forever ago when I bought the thing. You still have to pay for the books. I guess you did.
Pay to get the deck. Yeah.
It was like I don't know. It was like 6 years ago.
That's
more.
6 or 7 years ago now.
Forever and ever and ever ago. But another really cool thing you can do on there just to learn, you can get better at the game by being on War Room. So like typically people think I only can get better at this game by playing it and getting across the table and rolling dice. And there's obviously like a truth in that, like nothing beats playing the game. But you can definitely get better just by building a list for another faction, or just finding a list online, building it on your phone on War Room, and just try to work out the synergies and how it's just have a good deep dive into those rules. That's an amazing tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
To get better at the game.
I had a game with Leo Robinson, who would travel up to York and played last week. He played my Wormwood list. And, at the end of the game, I just gave him my phone so he could copy the Wormwood list down. And I said to him, just go away and just have a look through the cards and get a better handle on some of the key interactions that are taking place here, because I was doing things that he'd just missed in the discussion or the conversation prior to the game. But building lists or just playing around on other factions is a huge way of learning the game. And you don't have to get everything, but just that familiarity with the casters or particular jacks or beasts or units, it helps so much. Just that's a Wartwolf Stalker. All right, high defense, low armor. He's pretty fast. He's got sprint as an animus, right? It helps you answer the questions in the games as to what it is I've got that can manage that situation. Definitely. Do definitely have a tinker around building lists in other factions other than your own to just to expand your game knowledge. But I find you see interactions in factions that you're new to that helps your list building in your own faction, because you go back to your own faction with a different perspective as well.
And you always think I always think that they're better than they are. So it's think like, oh god, I'll never be able to kill them. They're ridiculous. And then you look and you're like, oh, okay, actually, it's not as it's scary. It's always like that when you play a faction. Yeah, it's always like that when you play a faction, and you really quickly realise the weak points or the shortfalls of the faction. Yeah. But whereas when you're playing against them and have not had them in front of you, you think, oh my god, they're invincible. You can't kill that. You can do some of that on Warroom, can't you? Just by building a list and having a good dive into the rules.
Great resource. Or just if you're playing at events or tournaments and you play a list, and even if you let's say you get your ass handed to you, just ask your opponent, oh, can I just take a photo of your list?
Yeah.
And then the day after or on the car drive home, just put that list into War Room and have a good look through it again to go, right. All right, if I'd done that to that model, that'd have been better. All right, I needed that to face off there against that unit. That'd have been better.
As a slight tangent on that note is, I think for newer players, an incredibly useful thing you can do is at the beginning of the game, because I did that YouTube short the other day of ways you can get better at the game that doesn't involve just like playing the game, or like things you can do before a tournament to help you prep. And I think it's in that camp of an amazing thing you can do is spend 3-4 minutes just saying to your opponent, can I just copy a list on my War Room really quickly, and just get in their phone, get in yours, and just right, cool, yeah, add that, make sure you get the theme right. And it is such an incredible, especially if you're a really experienced player and you kind of know the meta and you know the stuff, you kind of maybe wasting time. But a newer player, just having their entire list and all their interactions very quickly on the phone is an unbelievable resource. Because I think and this is a subject for another cast, I think, so I won't go into the detail of it, but I think the psychology of the game really interests me and what people do during a game that is to their disadvantage. So I think players that talk out loud, I find that interesting, because I feel like they're just giving you loads of information about what they're doing and thinking. It seems like a kind of nice thing to do across the table is kind of, oh, maybe I should do that, maybe I should do the other. But to me, I'm thinking, just give me loads of information about what your current strategy and plan is. It's allowing me to think what I'm going to do back on my turn. But when you have to ask your opponent questions about models, you're basically just telling them, you're just giving them needless information. Do you know what I mean? I guess in a casual friendly game, it doesn't really matter. But if you wanted to win a tournament game, it's so much easier rather than flagging something up, just being able to look on War Room quickly, even in their turn on their time, find it out. Okay, cool, yeah, right, okay. I thought that was Arm 18.
Yeah.
That is such a great tool.
Or even a happy medium of that, Paul. Just stick the caster and the battle group into your phone. It doesn't even need
just
to
the
be
key models. Yeah, it could just be that's a good point. It could just be the
the really key models.
The caster, the battle group, and maybe a model that you didn't know what it does or something. Just whack it in your phone.
Yeah, because then you can just check what spells has he got. Because quite often people throw out a spell, don't they? Put this spell on there. You're like, oh, just let me check.
Yeah.
Because often it's the weird things in the spells, isn't it, that catch people out a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a couple of spells that they add +2 to the armor, but then in the small print it also says can't be pushed.
Yeah.
And it's those little things that catch people out a little bit, or gets +2 defense and can't be knocked down, or you're and it's the and bit that people miss often. So just having the Warcaster's card, or if there's a journeyman or something like that in there, just picking that out so you know what's going to happen. Just refamiliarize yourself with exactly what the feat says. +3 strength feat. All right. But is that to everyone? Is it to things just in the control area?
Is it a pulse? Is it an aura?
Is it D6 plus models, or is it just that extra little bit of detail makes a huge difference, I think, in terms of how you approach and play the game.
Yeah, definitely.
And helps massively.
100%.
But for me, War Room, I think, is a critical and crucial part of the hobby itself.
Yeah, and it puts the game of Warmachine and Hordes on a better level than a lot of other systems. I think the fact that you can just start making lists and getting involved in the hobby, sat with the TV on in the background, rather than sieving through loads of books and stuff. And it's a really cool part of the game, isn't it?
How many How many Legion lists have you got on your phone currently? Just go on. Just
Well, no, I've tried not to go too
no. Have you
ridiculous.
tried to streamline
1, 2,
it?
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's actually quite a lot in it. But I've started to categorize them now into like steamroller pairings and stuff. And some of them are just ridiculous. There's that one I sent you the other day that were like, how are you going to score any points on scenario? And I was like, listen, how's it going to die is the better question.
Was that your extreme business list?
It was my Thagros list. We just like, just trying
that was full like New York stockbroker business.
Wrong Iron Snapjoy were in there. Yeah, more like beasts, just like beasts. It's just like all beasts.
Yeah.
How can this list not die list?
Yeah, I think so. I've got 8 circle lists in my phone at the moment.
Shit, I feel then I've like 16 now.
But I've probably got the same number of Legion lists in my phone. Like there's half a dozen Signal lists in there's. Yeah, I just if I'm not tinkering with my own lists, and then I don't know whether you do this. Like, do you ever try and flog a dead horse as well? Do you just go in and like, right, when was the last time I saw Mosar on the table?
Yeah, I've tried.
Surely,
well,
surely after this dynamic update, there's a way to like make this guy good and get him on the table and build something. And
I do try, and then I delete it. I was like, Lilith 2, she's great. I misplayed Lilith. She's good. Yeah, Lilith 4. We covered a lot there. We covered importance of like list building, style, process. A decent detailed chat. Do you feel like we missed anything that you wanted to get out? Because we're on an hour 22, so it's a good timeline.
No, I don't think so. Like I think probably I don't know whether you've been noting the key takedowns, take-home messages, but just I think about how you want to play the game.
Yeah.
And make sure your list reflects that in the best way it can. Like, what is it that you get satisfaction out of within the game? And I think, I know Gav's not here, so we won't rib him or give him too much grief.
No, do.
But I think he was really chuffed when he wrote that Morgul list, that he played at Welsh and then he played at the team event and stuff.
Yeah.
Like he really liked the idea of it and the concept of it. But I think what he's found is he's not actually a huge fan of just going for turn 2, turn 3 assassinations.
Yeah.
And so although he's invested time in the list design, time in like getting it on the board and rehearsing or refining the list, now he's played it, 15, 20 odd times, he's coming to the conclusion that actually it's just, it's not for me.
His style. Gav's style is more like getting you to lose the will to live. Over like definitely 7 turns.
7 turns. He was posting turn by turn photo updates, wasn't he? Of his game,
we were trolling him so
his
bad.
Game on Monday, and I think it started at 7 o'clock, didn't it? And it got to 11 o'clock, and they were on turn 3 or something.
I was like sending pictures of like skeletons, like the year 2045, turn 6.
But I think that's just a really good sort of authentic real life example of when you end up playing something that's just not you.
Not your style.
Doesn't suit who you are, your character,
yeah,
and how you want to play the game. And but to the point where he'd become a bit disenfranchised with the caster and the list.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you just need to play something different.
Play something different. Yeah.
Like he'd made a few comments like, "Oh, I really like how you've got that in that list and how it does that." I'm like, "Well, just see if there's something similar in Scorn."
Find that in Scorn. Yeah.
If they're the sort of interactions that you're going to get a lot of satisfaction out of, see how you generate those in Scorn in terms of reflecting your play style.
Yeah.
And so I do think that's really important, is that find the play style that is you, that suits your character.
Yeah.
And I think it's like anything, isn't it? That if you find that, then your list will be better because you enjoy playing it.
Yeah, you'll immediately do better with it.
Yeah, you're invested in it. You're invested in making it better. You're invested in playing it into a whole range of things. You don't mind losing games as well as winning games. You learn a lot from losing those. Like, you're always going to get more out of something that you're invested in playing.
Yeah.
And that investment comes from playing the things that, for whatever reason, they appeal to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether it's, the models that you've got on the table, the caster that you've got on the table, like just happens to be your favorite caster, happens to be your favorite, character war beast or warjack, favorite units. Yeah. Like, get them in there. If that's how you want to play and that suits you, perfect. I know we gave Phil a bit of grief earlier in the cast. I don't know whether he's still listening, but
you should always give Phil grief.
Could you imagine Phil ever playing a Signar list that didn't have gun majors in it?
Not with his dice.
But for him that suited him, didn't it? That, like the satisfaction, the enjoyment that he got out of having that unit in the list. Taking them out immediately reduces that.
Yeah.
Put them back in. Put them back in. Like, it suits that play style. It suits how you want to play the game, doesn't it? In terms of what you're trying to engineer from your, or how you're trying to navigate your way to your win condition.
Definitely.
Decide whether you are you a more scenario player, or you're a more assassination player, are you a more attrition player? Having established which of those three that you lean towards, make sure your list build reflects that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Be a strong, independent woman.
Be a strong
list building.
On that bombshell. On that. Thanks, Beyonce. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming on the show.
Got a podcast title there. No trademark infringement whatsoever.
It's not good with the title of this book. Wicked. Well, I think what we've proved today is we don't need Gav. He claims to bring personality and ideas, but turns out it just brings sort of like a lethargy and punctuality issues. So I think if there's been any success from that, Bryce, that we don't need Gav. Oh, we're joking. We love Gav. We want to be around with Gav. So we're recording next week. We've got Jamie on, haven't we?
That's the plan.
We've got the Russian spy on. So thanks for people that have been in the chat throughout. Thanks to people that were chatting to us, making comments. Appreciate it loads. Thanks for everyone for watching on YouTube. We're everywhere now. We're on YouTube. We're on iTunes. We're on Spotify. Spotify, we're on video as well. You seen that, Brett? You like that? We've got like Spotify video now as well as audio. If you watch it on Spotify, you get the actual video, which is quite nice.
I blew my son's mind this morning by telling Alexa to play Epic FM. And boom, like that.
There we go.
It was there.
We're on. Even Alexa knows who we are. But yeah, like, subscribe, and all that jazz. Oh, and there's the winner from the Signar thing. I know who it was as well. It was the guy that in the chat suggested that we should. The best competition idea was to come up with a better version of the dogs with two tails and all that jazz. Whoever that
scoring
is.
system.
Horrendous scoring system you created.
It's not horrendous.
I'm gonna look. It was horrendous. I'm gonna look back through the video and I'll put it. I will give them a shout. I will find them and put it in the comments.
Tune in next week to see what our new scoring system is.
Yeah, whatever that person.
It's not going to be new. It's going to be the same but better.
Oh, good. We'll have to make it spy themed because Jamie's coming up. Wicked. All right. Well, cheers, Brett. Good to chat to you, mate. Thanks for coming on. Well, not coming on.
Good to chat to you.
Thanks for chatting to us. Thanks everybody in the chat, and thanks everyone to watch online, and we'll see you next time.